Greetings, happy people. I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Affinity 10. My name is Nick with TDG. In this episode, we're going to take a deeper dive into the layout of our lookbook publication by adding in our paragraph styles and our character styles. If you're not familiar with what paragraph styles or character styles are, think of them as a very quick and efficient way, if you have them set up properly from the start, to quickly update the formatting of all the typography in your publication, which can be a huge time saver. I want to take a slightly different approach in this video by leaving it mostly unedited. So you'll get to hear how many times I stumble over my words, how many times I break the paragraph styles or character styles, because anytime you're learning this for the first time, it typically doesn't go as smoothly as you want when you're trying it for yourself. So you'll get to experience all my missteps with me, which, if nothing else, can be funny and entertaining. So let's go ahead and open up our publication and get started. Anytime I'm setting up a style guide, essentially, for myself or for a client, I like to do that on its own master page. That just makes it much easier to see how all the typefaces work together. Now, for demonstration purposes, I'll show you how applying a character style can quickly be updated versus doing a local character style to save us a lot of time if we had a several hundred-page document that we had to have updated based on a change from the client or our own personal preference. So to get started, we're going to go ahead and right-click on Master Page A and duplicate that to Master Page B to set up our style guide. Over here in our Text Styles panel, if this is your first time seeing this panel or being exposed to it, a quick way to tell the difference between a paragraph style and a character style is by simply looking at the icon next to the name. If it's a paragraph icon, that means it's a paragraph style. If you have an undercased A, that means it's a character style. So let's demonstrate what a character style can do for us. So I'm going to get my text frame tool over here, and I'm going to drag out a basic text frame. Doesn't matter where at this point. I'm going to right click and choose Insert with Filler Text. I'm going to quickly duplicate this over on the right by holding down Shift and Alt and just dragging over to the right so we have a couple instances of the same text. Now on the one on the right, I'm going to apply the basic strong format that's applied to us by Affinity by clicking on that, and it's going to bold the typeface. Over here on the left, I'm going to do what's called a local style by just coming up here to our properties panel and choosing bold. Now we're going to duplicate this several times across this page to represent several instances of these styles. So I'm not worried about spacing right now, just dragging these out. And let's decide that later in the process, a client or our own personal preference, we decide to change the bold to be red bold. Well, to do that, if we set up our paragraph styles or character styles right from the start, we can simply come into that style, in this case, the strong style, double click on that. Then I'm going to come down to the font, color, and decorations. And I'm going to change this to be red by clicking on the swatches and choosing red. You'll notice when I did that, all the text frames that had the character style applied got updated, which is a huge time saver. Just imagine if we had hundreds of pages where we had this style applied and they were all local. You'd have to go through one by one, page by page, and try to find them all. By the end of that, you're sweating bullets and pulling your hair out. We don't want to have that happen. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. I just wanted to demonstrate what we can do with a properly set up character style. I'm going to cancel out of that. And if we did them all locally, I'm going to highlight this text by double clicking on it and clicking on red in our swatches panel. And just as expected, the one changed, but all of the other ones did not. And I'm pretty sure that's what Toby was referring to with his Toby tip of the day. So without delaying any more, let's get into setting up our own paragraph styles. This will probably be a two-part video as I don't want it to run too long. Then we'll start setting up some of the foundational styles and come back later to set up some of the styles such as our pull quotes and our captions. Let's go ahead and delete these off of our page. And if this is your first time getting exposed to paragraph styles and character styles, I do recommend coming through the styles that they have provided you and kind of seeing how they put these together. Now, if this is your first time opening one of these panels, you're going to see all these and your eyes are probably going to roll back and you're going to start sweating. As I go through this demonstration, we're only going to introduce these as we need them because I don't want to overload you with too much information because you're not going to be able to absorb all that. So we'll come back, we'll set the basic foundations, and we'll keep building on them throughout the video series. But do take the time, if you're just getting familiar with them and go through these and kind of get familiar with what each one can do and what properties you can adjust. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. And now what I would like to do is get rid of all of these styles. So to do that, I'm going to click on the drop-down menu and choose Delete Unused Styles. And that's going to get rid of all the styles we had in our document. We can now start with no style and no style here, which is what we're wanting. What I like to do when I'm setting up my document is start with the base styling. And what I mean by that is what style is going to be primarily used the most throughout the document. In this case, it's going to be a lot of body copy. So I want my base copy, or my base paragraph style rather, to be set up as body copy. So I'm going to get our text frame again, and I'm going to draw out a basic text frame. I'm going to right click and choose Insert Filler Text. Now, still remembering some of the last local formatting we did, which is perfectly fine. We're going to go through and change all these. And to do that, we'll start with the local styling up here. Now, there are a couple of different ways to do paragraph styles. This way is going to be the local starting way. And you can also set them up by simply going over here and clicking on New Paragraph Style and starting to format them that way. For now, we'll start doing it this way. I am going to be using 3 typefaces throughout this publication to start. I do recommend not using any more than 2 or 3, as then it just becomes too busy, depending on the type of publication you're going for. And in this case, being a lookbook and being really art heavy, I want to keep the styling pretty simplistic and not using any more than 2 or 3 styles. So the main body copy, I'm going to drop this down, and we're going to be using Source Serif Pro and Source Sans Pro as the main body copy. So I'm going to scroll down the list here. You can also start typing an S in the top search to have it pop up a little bit quicker. So whichever way is easier for you. I'm going to come down here and find Source Serif Pro and click on that. I want it to be regular. I want it to be 10-point font. And scrolling over here some more, I want to change this to be black for now. We'll always come back and adjust this later. I do want it to be left aligned. And I do want to change the leading value here because right now it's set to auto leading. Anytime you see the leading with brackets or parentheses, that means it's auto leading. I want to make sure I have full control over the leading values by setting an exact value. And that's the whole purpose of setting up our baseline grid, is to have more control over our typography and ensure our text is properly aligned. So I will now change this to be our baseline grid of 12 and say OK. And that did not update. Let me go in. There we go. I didn't hit enter. And now we have our base styling set. So now I can come over here and choose Create Paragraph Style. As long as I have this selected, it's going to pick up on the styling here and apply it to our paragraph style. So I can click on this, and I'm going to change this style to be base. And I'm naming it base because it's the base style I'm basing most of the typography in this layout on. And as we scroll through this, you'll notice that we have the font. It's picking up on the local styling we did because we already have this selected. If we didn't have this selected, none of these would already be here. I'm going to continue to scroll down, make sure leading is exactly 12 point, which is what we want. And this is all I want for the basic formatting. I'm going to click OK. So now we have our basic base foundation paragraph style set. And the way we can check that is if I click on that again, you'll notice in our text styles, it's highlighted blue. So now we have our first paragraph style set up, and now I can start setting up my second paragraph style. Now this is going to be a header of our document, or a headline rather, in our publication. I'll probably have a couple different headlines going and headline styles. So to start with, I'm going to get our text frame tool. I'm going to make sure no style is selected and just go ahead and drag out a text frame and right click and insert filler text. And if you're not familiar with where insert filler text is, remember it's also underneath text, insert filler text. So now I'm going to create this style a little differently. I'm going to click on this text box. I'm going to click on create new paragraph style. And now we're going to begin editing some of these. So I'm going to change this to be header 1. Left aligned is fine. But now we'll just go ahead and jump up here. First, I want to show you this menu. We will be coming into this later in this course. We have a based on style, which we'll be setting in a little bit. You also have next style and next level. We'll demystify what all these mean later, but for now, let's go down to our font. And I want this to be our Montserrat font. So I'm going to scroll down until I find that. There it is. I want the font style to be bold. I want the font size to be 48 point, or start at 48. We'll see what that looks like. And we'll go down to color and decorations, and black is fine. Scrolling down here without getting too far into them, I'm going to go down to capitals. I want these to be all caps. Going down to spacing, I want this to be exactly 12 point. No, that's not going to look very pretty, is it? That's kind of all crunched up together. So let's go ahead and fix that. I want this to be 48 point. We'll start with that and see how that looks. Not 487, 48. That looks much better. We have a little bit of breathing room between this, and it's much more readable. I also want to remove any of the spacing after, because I want to make sure I can control that myself. Scrolling down here, the last thing we're going to take a look at here is going to be our decorations. Now, I would like this to be underlined. So to underline that, I'm going to make sure decorations are enabled and choose the bottom edge option. Now, when I click on that, you'll notice we have an underline going across our text. Now, I want to ensure that this underline goes all the way across this text. Right now, it's stopping where the last character stops in the last line of the paragraph. I want it to go all the way across. So to do that, I'm going to make sure I go over here to the right option and change this from text to column. And now it's going to stretch out to the length of our column, which is exactly what we're looking for. I'm going to change the color of this for now to be an orange color. And we'll say OK. So now we have our first header created for our publication. And there are lots of other settings we'll come back into later as I start setting up the actual paragraphs in the layouts. And you'll see what I mean by I have to go back and adjust these things, and you'll get to experience those along the way. I'm now going to make another paragraph style for a header. I'm going to duplicate this by Alt-shifting and dragging down. And I would like to change the font family in this particular case, as well as the underscore color. So what I would like to do is click on this. I'm going to go ahead and click on paragraph style. It's going to automatically default this to header 2 because we already have a header 1 created. And I'm going to go into the font, and I want to change this. So right now it says font family no changed. I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and we're going to scroll down until we find Source Serif Pro. There it is. Click on that. And now you'll notice that this has been updated. I'm going to go down to our decorations. Right now, this means there is no change, which is what that hyphen means in there. I want to go ahead and click on this and click on it again to enable it. And now I'm going to add another underline color. So I'm going to click on the bottom edge again. I'm going to change the color. In this case, we'll just leave it as a basic black. We'll leave it set at 1 point thickness. And I do still want to change this from text to be column. And now we'll say OK. So now we set up our first 2 paragraph styles in addition to our base paragraph style. Now the last style I'm going to set up for this demonstration is going to be justified text. And justified text can be a little bit tricky, and this is where I think Adobe InDesign has a pretty good advantage over Affinity. That's my biggest disappointment, I would think, with the update of Affinity, is I love what they've done, don't get me wrong, but I would like to see them add a lot more powerful features into the typography and paragraph styles to give us more freedom and more control over the formatting of our text. So for justified text, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and I'm actually going to just duplicate our base paragraph style here. So with our base paragraph style duplicated, I'm now going to select new paragraph style. For the style, I want to leave this set at base, and we'll come on to this in the future videos, but we'll leave it set as this for now. Scrolling down here to the main option I want to take a look at, which is our spacing. I want to make sure our spacing is set properly. And one thing I do want to change here is I want the space after to be 0 and make sure that is set at 0. Then for the alignment, I do want this to be set as justified left. Let me find that here. Justified last line left. There we go. Everything else can stay the same, except for I do want to do an indent in this case. So what do I mean by indent? Well, I want the first line to indent. And usually when I'm doing an indentation, I base that on the leading value. So in this case, I'm using a 12-point leading value. So I'm going to type in 6 PT for 6 point. Go ahead and press tab, and we now have our first line of our paragraph indented. Scrolling down to our justification. Now the settings I'm going to be sharing with you for this are what I find to work the best. It doesn't mean they're going to work for every situation. I want to make that disclaimer. You may have to modify the percentages ever so slightly based on the type family you're using, but these can be a good starting guide for you and what I find works the easiest and the best, at least when starting out. And working with justified text, this is where I feel InDesign has a big advantage on because they also use glyph styling and glyph scaling, which is also very beneficial when working with justification. So working through our word spacing, the first item we're going to change is I want the minimum to be 75%. I want the maximum to be 85%, or I'm sorry, the desire to be 85%, and the maximum to be 110%. So while I was trying to space this out, let me go ahead and move this over so you can see it a little bit easier for the justified text. We want to try to have this look as smooth as possible without having too many large gaps in our typography. I'm now going to go down to our letter spacing, and for our letter spacing, I like to do it to -2%, the desired to 0%, and the maximum to 4%. And as I was going through that, you can always go back and kind of watch how this formatting changes, and we have a nice, clean format to our justified text. Now, you may have to modify these ever so slightly depending on the type family you're using, but this can be a good starting point for you. And I'm now going to click OK. So with these first couple styles set up, let's say, for example, I wanted to do a 2-column layout for our typography. I'm going to quickly duplicate this over on the right. And up here at the top, we have the option to split our columns. Let me find that option up here. Right here, if we scroll over top of that, we have choose a number of columns. I have 2 columns. Don't you love the ability of live? I couldn't find the icon. It's right in front of my face and I was just overlooking it. Gotta love it. So there's our 2 columns, but you'll notice the gutter, and that's the space between columns, just like it's a space between our rows here and our columns. This is currently set at 0.33 inches. You want your gutter width to match your leading value. So I'm going to put in 12 point. In most cases, for styling or artistic freedom, you may want to separate columns a little bit more than that, but if it's a page-by-page basis, you want the leading value to match your baseline grid and your gutters. So I'll type in 12 point, hit enter, and now we have 2 columns. So I'll go ahead and bring this up here. And I'll bring this down and duplicate it one more time with holding Shift and Alt. And we can go ahead and jump this up to 3 columns. Now, anytime you're working with justified text, or really working with columns in general, you don't want your columns to get too narrow because you want to have so many characters on a line. Otherwise, it just becomes difficult to read. And also, the narrower you make your columns, especially when you're working with justified text, you're going to find the spacing gets really far off. So I typically don't go any more then 3 columns, depending on the width of the publication that I'm working with, of course. If in this case, I wouldn't go any more than 3. If I try to go more than that, it's most likely going to end up breaking and going sideways a little bit. So there's 4. You can kind of see here, it's starting to fall apart a little bit. So in this case, I'm not going to stretch this beyond 3 for our styling purposes, as 3 and 2 and 1 will work plenty for the layouts we're doing here. I am going to stop the video at this point with setting up these first couple base styles. In the next video, we'll finish setting up these styles and we'll start getting into the actual layout utilizing our smart templates and show you how those can work. Please remember to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, help the algorithm, help a designer out. And this also lets me know that you're enjoying the content and you're getting something out of it and keeps me motivated to keep giving you more videos coming up in the future. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.